It's my nerd world. Welcome to it, a Star Wars podcast. This is one of those weeks where I actually thought that I wasn't going to do a show because I didn't think there was a lot to talk about. But as I'm going about my Sunday morning, I sat down at the computer and thought, well, you know what? I got a brand new book coming out this week. I might as well take the opportunity to promote it and make sure that I do my weekly Star Wars podcast. And as I started to grab emails from listener feedback and looking online, I realized I actually do have quite a bit to talk about. So on the show this week, Kathleen Kennedy is not going anywhere, at least according to, the guy that runs Disney. Plus, we do have a few listener feedback emails we'll get into, and they're going to drive the conversation today as I continue to talk about my love of Star Wars, and more specifically, the power of The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker together. For this fan, I just feel like both of those movies in two different parts of the fandom are really maligned, wherein I'm of the opinion that combined, those two films are quite possibly like the most powerful sequels in all of the saga. So we're going to get into that on the show this week. And as I mentioned, I do have a brand new book coming out, and I'll give you some details on that, plus an exclusive to you listening to the podcast, and also for those signed up for the newsletter only. So we'll get to that at the end of this week's show. I'm really glad that you are taking the time out of your day. I appreciate it to listen to a Star Wars podcast here on My Nerd World.
It's an instinct. Feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Have I waited? And now you're coming together. Is your undoing.
Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny. The Force will be with you.
Always.
My Nerd World.
It is the Star Wars podcast, and I am your host, Jon Justice. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm really glad you're with the show this week. I do have a brand new book in my EMBARK series coming out on Tuesday. It is EMBARK, The Rocket Queen. It is book 5 in the series. My bad, I'm losing track. Book 5 in the series, and it's a continuation of the story that I've written so far. It is next to Book 4, the standalone Gahan Corbijn and the Asteroid of Misfortune that was released at the end of last year. And it does kick off a brand new trilogy in the series. I'll have more details at the end of the show. I hope you stick around to hear a bit about the plot of the story. It's a real special story to me because I had an idea when I wrote the first 3 books that I was planning on doing, and I held off for this book. And I'm really, really excited about it. So again, we'll get to more details of that a little bit at the end of the show, so a little bit later on in the show. But I'm glad you're with you're with the podcast this week. As I mentioned, I wasn't sure if I was even going to do this show this week because there's not a lot going on, and I didn't have a lot of listener feedback this week either, just because things are so quiet. However, a couple of the emails that I did receive kind of sparked my interest, on top of the fact that I was watching the Rise of Skywalker yesterday, and a few more thoughts popped it into my head that I wanted to share with you. So this week's show is a little bit different because we're actually going to focus on listener feedback as a means to get into the content of the show this week. So with that being said, we might as well go ahead and make that portion of the show kind of official.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
Friend of the show, Miranda, wrote in and says, you have an interesting topic coming to you this week. It seems like Miss Kathleen Kennedy is going to stick around Lucasfilm for some time. I bet some people, some favorites of yours, are pretty ... excited about this and can't wait to talk about it. So there was another investor's call, right? You can't call them Iger cons anymore. I guess you can call them Chapek cons. So the new CEO of Disney, because Bob Iger took on a different role, is Bob Chapek. And so during the investor call this week, there was a Q&A section, and somebody in the audience who brought into rumors about how Dave Filoni was going to be put in charge of all of Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy was getting fired or soon will be. So basically, somebody decided during the Q&A to ask, when is Kathleen Kennedy getting fired and when is Dave Filoni taking over? I don't know if the person was trying to be funny, like, haha, those are stupid rumors, or they were actually serious. If you follow, other shows and the fandom and Reddit, you know very well, and if you don't, I'll tell you, within the fandom, within the vocal parts of the fandom, those that produce weekly videos like I do, podcast, YouTube video shows, there has been swirling for quite a long time this idea that Kathleen Kennedy was going to get the boot because she has been failing, Star Wars and Disney and Lucasfilm. As a matter of fact, it was pretty funny. My dad reached out to me this week, and he had heard something similar through another relative of ours in the family who, in my opinion, had clearly seen one of these videos and was under the impression that it was Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau who are going to be getting the boot. Okay. This has been baseless clickbait territory for, ever since The Last Jedi came out, because there are portions of the fandom that, one, don't like the sequels and what Disney has done. There's been portions of the fandom that have never been on board with Disney even taking over Lucasfilm at all, and George Lucas selling Lucasfilm to Disney. And since then, there's a lot of individuals who I don't believe are being honest. I think that they produce these videos. They may actually genuinely feel this way, but they spread around a lot of these rumors just because a lot of people go and listen to them, and they get a lot of clicks on YouTube, and they make a lot of money over it. So the response to the individual from the Q&A session during Disney's investors call, asking about when was Dave Filoni going to be put in charge of all of Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy getting fired or soon would be, the CEO, Bob Chapek's response was this: "We have been absolutely thrilled that we can have the creative talent in our company, the likes of Kathleen Kennedy. We look forward to having Kathleen directing Lucasfilm activities for years to come." So, obviously anything can change, but I'm taking the man at his word. Kathleen Kennedy knows what she's doing, and she's made billions and billions of dollars for Lucasfilm, regardless of what portions of the fandom feel about any particular piece of Star Wars content. It's just the truth. Her track record is stellar, not just when it comes to Star Wars, but when it comes to just films in general, and the number of movies that have had her name has been attached to is a rarity in Hollywood. So, of course, she's going to be with... I mean, look, the bottom line, in my opinion, is Kathleen Kennedy is going to be sticking around with Lucasfilm for as long as she wants to, and for good reason. Again, she's made them billions of dollars. I'd like to think that the individuals who are running these content-creating entities, right, these corporations, understand that we live in a controversial world now because everybody has the ability and platforms to go and let every single thought that pops into their head known whenever they'd like to. And it wasn't always that way. I'm personally of the opinion that I don't think as humans that we were ever meant to be as connected as we are. And unfortunately, we are right now. And it perpetuates a mob mentality in politics. It certainly does it in the fandoms. I mean, essentially now politics has turned into what fandoms are. And that's really, really unfortunate. It's one of the reasons, though, why I enjoy doing the show, because I do attempt to keep it positive. And at a bare minimum, I can go and put out content talking about Star Wars the way that I personally think it should be talked about. If people dig it, they dig it. But I'm not going down those particular paths, and I like what, for the most part, Lucasfilm has done. I like what Lucasfilm has done for Star Wars almost across the board. Some things more than others, but a lot of the things that I like less is mostly because it's not necessarily geared towards me. The big question mark, as I've talked about on the show, really has been the High Republic publications, which I have not dove into yet. It doesn't have I'm not really drawn to the subject matter yet, and the material. Maybe one day I will be, but when it comes to enjoying my Star Wars and feeding my fandom, I go to the content that I already have, and because the High Republic just hasn't interested me yet, I haven't gotten into it. So maybe sometime down the line when I finish the book series and I have a little bit more time to read, I will. Or perhaps when we get some live action content. Because for as much as I'm an author now, I prefer my Star Wars in sort of live action format. And then, again, I pray that my stories themselves can become live action one day. Guys, Kathleen Kennedy's not going anywhere, and she shouldn't go anywhere. The woman's got a stellar track record, and she knows what she's doing. All right, let's move on to another issue, and I just want to mention this briefly. Not a big deal, but Lucasfilm has canceled most of the Mandalorian publications coming out. So this includes the visual guide, specifically, and the novel. The speculation is because of the removal of Cara Dune, and now the potential to bring Hera in as a replacement with when it comes to Rangers of the New Republic. I think that Disney is probably looking to remove any content of Cara Dune from those particular publications. I hope that's not the case. I really do. I can understand perhaps Disney doesn't want to exacerbate the doing that thing with my fingers problem that they ended up with when it comes to Cara Dune, which I don't think should have happened in the first place. One of the other comments that the CEO, Bob Chapek, said, as a matter of fact, let me bring it up right here, because I actually have Reddit leaks open, because this kind of applies to exactly what I'm talking about. But he was also asked about the Gina Carano, Cara Dune situation. I'm looking down here. Disney CEO says controversial Mandalorian firing was about values that are universal. Okay, I disagree with that, because values aren't universal. We all have different values in our lives, and we value different things. I think there is sort of a universal, moral right versus wrong, but even for some people, there's some differences there as well. So this idea that values are universal, and the CEO went on to say that he doesn't consider Disney to be a conservative or liberal company, adding that values are universal. I disagree with that statement, because values aren't universal. One person's values are, quite simply, one person's values are not another person's values. And look into Star Wars in and of itself. As the example, something that Adam Driver had said, I think as viewers, we would look at Kylo Ren as being the bad guy, right? But within Star Wars, Adam Driver specifically said that, and I think it rings true for Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader, that what he thought he was doing wasn't wrong. He thought he was doing the right thing. Now, you do have those, what I consider sort of those universals, right versus wrong, killing of individuals and causing people pain. That's different. But what Gina Carano was doing was expressing her values that wasn't harming anybody else. So, again, getting back to why I brought it up, apparently the visual guide has been canceled, and the Mando novel, and the speculation is because they're probably removing the Cara Dune character from those publications, which, again, I think is unfortunate, because she's still going to exist, and I was watching The Mandalorian, this week. I started a rewatch of The Mandalorian, and, what are they going to do, replace her in the show? I don't think that's going to end up happening. All right, let's move on to the other email that we got this week. Case S writes this. Perhaps a big missed opportunity would have been to include Rian Johnson in on The Rise of Skywalker, to have him collaborate with JJ. Who knows what could have been? I don't like dwelling. I just hope that Disney has learned from their mistakes. Okay. Well, again, this is where we get to that part of the show that I mentioned, and that thing that I say so often, and that is how art is subjective, right? And it's based off of point of views of individuals. And so, Case has his opinion and I have mine. When it comes to a collaboration between Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams, for me personally, I would not want to see that. Here you have two very strong creative elements. J.J. Abrams chose to work with Chris Terrio. Who knows if... And he was the one who was at the helm of Episode 9. So Rian Johnson being his own person and being at the helm of Episode 8, these are two... strong, opinionated individuals. And unless J.J. Abrams had said, hey, Rian Johnson, why don't you join me to write it? And this is perhaps what Case is saying. That would have been one thing. But to just pair them together, I wouldn't have agreed with necessarily, unless they desired to. And I think J.J. Abrams did the right thing in bringing an individual to help him with the script in Chris Terrio. As far as Disney learning from their mistakes, for me personally, I don't believe that they did. Again, but art is subjective. So this is what I wanted to mention in watching The Rise of Skywalker again this weekend. And thank you for the email, Case. I hope that I totally respect your opinion, but again, this stuff is subjective. It's all a part of a point of view. For me, as a fan, the combo of what J.J. Abrams did in The Last Jedi and in The Rise of Skywalker makes those two films the most powerful sequels together than any of the other films within the franchise. When I look at two other films together, I look at The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker being the best paired and better paired than all the other movies. That's not a dig on all the other films in any way, shape, or form. I just mean of two films that complement each other. To me, the two that do it the best are The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, and I do have some reasons for that. Watching The Rise of Skywalker this time around, I picked up on a couple of things that I've mentioned before, but they really stuck out this time. And it was what J.J. Abrams did with The Rise of Skywalker that really enhanced and riffed off of what Rian Johnson did. And there was a lot more in The Rise of Skywalker than I think I even realized upon, on previous viewings. When you start off with the opening crawl, meanwhile, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren rages in search of the Phantom Emperor, determined to destroy any threat to his power. Again, people have said many times that they felt like The Rise of Skywalker was disconnected from The Last Jedi, and I completely disagree with that. And that alone right there is an example of how they are connected. Kylo Ren was Rey turned Kylo Ren down. He became the Supreme Leader. And so to kick off The Rise of Skywalker and have this be, the dead speak, and suddenly this entity, this well-known legend, right, within the galaxy of Palpatine returns, saying, putting out a warning. Kylo Ren's like, whoa, what up, dude? I'm the one in charge here. So we open up the film with, he's determined to find the Phantom Emperor and destroy him because he's a threat to his power, only to discover him and then realize, oh, the Emperor actually can give me more of what I need to achieve the goal of getting Rey to join me. Especially when he finds out that Rey is a Palpatine, right? The movie opening with Kylo searching for Palpatine because he doesn't want anything to get in his way. To me, that's a great riff off of what Rian Johnson laid out in The Last Jedi. One of the opening shots on Mustafar, almost like the opening shot after we get the First Order Special Forces TIE Fighters and the First Order Star Destroyer outside the planet is an up-close shot of Kylo Ren with his lightsaber pointed out, which is one of the signature shots from the Praetorian Guard scene in The Last Jedi. I just thought I hadn't even picked up on it before. You get the Kylo extending his hand again for Rey, thinking this time he can bring her to him again. Poetry based off of what had happened in The Last Jedi. He almost got her. He thought he almost got Rey to join him in The Last Jedi, but now he has this new piece of information. He knows her full story now of what happened to her parents. He knows that she's a Palpatine. Now he thinks once again that he can get her to join him, and he fails, which continues to set him on a path to redemption, taking advantage of the broken mask. People have gone the other way with that, saying, oh, JJ needed to come up with a means to bring the helmet back. And we know that from the documentary, that JJ Abrams was wanting to bring the helmet back in. But I thought it was awesome that we end up with this now iconic pieced together helmet that Kylo uses to draw his energy from. And we never would have had that if it hadn't been for what Rian Johnson did in having Kylo Ren destroy it. And I think on top of that, too, the using Vader's helmet to tap into connecting with Rey, and this continued maximizing of the potential of the Force connection, the way that J.J. Abrams took what Rian Johnson did in giving us the Force Skype, and then taking it even further to where Kylo Ren at the start of the film, when Rey is training, uses the helmet to tap into that dark side energy, at least in my opinion, to end up planting those seeds in Rey's mind of potentially what could happen and what her destiny, what one of her potential destinies could be. Also, that training montage that we get at the beginning of The Rise of Skywalker is, in my opinion, a total extension of the training that she started to do in The Last Jedi, including getting the shot of Rey running along the ridge with her lightsaber that was from that we didn't get, right? So J.J. Abrams does his own version on Asian Kloss at the beginning of the film when she's training, and we get that far away shot of Rey running across the ridgeline with her lightsaber ignited. There was that famous trailer shot from the deleted scene that didn't end up in the movie when Rey was running on Ahch-To to what she thought was the caretaker's village being attacked. So we didn't get to end up seeing that. We didn't end up seeing that in The Last Jedi, but we got a version of that from, in The Rise of Skywalker. And really maximizing the potential of Reylo in what Rian Johnson started in The Last Jedi, what he felt was a romantic connection, and J.J. Abrams playing with that to the point where at the end of the film, we actually do end up getting that amazing kiss between the two of them before Ben Solo passes away, which I felt was masterful in the way that was done. I mean, it's no surprise to me that there were, 45 takes of that particular scene to get it right, because it really did offer the opportunity to, much like Rian Johnson did. For many of us watching The Last Jedi, I know that we always looked at the finger touch and lovin' as being romantic, but absent of Rian Johnson's public comments just watching the film, I think that there is some ambiguity there, and the viewer can take away a version of that where it's just their bond together. And what J.J. Abrams did in advancing that and bringing in a Force element of the dyad and then giving us a kiss at the end that, again, could be considered one or the other. I considered it very romantic, while I think other individuals, and even maybe J.J. Abrams, considered it more connection-friendly than being romance, right? J.J. Abrams started something with Rey in The Force Awakens and Kylo Ren, right? Many podcasts and early adopters of Reylo keyed in on that. what happened in The Last Jedi. You know, Girls with Sabers, did an amazing job of that, making those connections of those two individuals. And I know that they have their issues with what happened in The Rise of Skywalker. But be that as it may, you know, J.J. Abrams started something with Rey and Kylo Ren, Ben Solo in The Force Awakens. Rian Johnson did something really unique and different. Obviously divided the fandom because it was very controversial, but he did do something unique and different with The Last Jedi. I mean, even from just having it be 10 minutes after the film ended. But Rian Johnson took what J.J. started, he riffed on it, he added depth to it, and then J.J. Abrams comes in at the end with this film and closes the deal wherein you've got Rian Johnson, right, as a fan, the combination of what Rian Johnson did and what J.J. does in taking what Rian Johnson did and doing what he does is one of the biggest reasons why The Rise of Skywalker is my favorite movie, because I think that The Last Jedi is a masterpiece, and I also think that J.J. Abrams makes films that are totally rewatchable, and they move at a very, very fast clip. And the pacing on him is almost breakneck, and I love that. There's no scene and no portion in The Rise of Skywalker that I want to miss. But in doing that, he also included a lot of this great emotional depth and these things that Rian Johnson brought to the table, and closed out with this really fun adventure story on top of this very involved and complex relationship, and on top of all that, closing out all of the films. All 9 of these movies. There was a moment when The Rise of Skywalker came out and I wanted an ending that was more akin to what we get in other saga closers. And I'll even use Star Wars as the example here in a moment. But something more akin to like Lord of the Rings, where we get a wrap-up of all the characters going off to different places. I'll never forget the episode that I did talking about that pre-The Rise of Skywalker release, that I wonder if at the end of the film we will see Lando going back to wherever he lives, and we see Chewie going back to Kashyyyk, and do we see Rey going back to Jakku, or does she go back to Naboo, or does she end up on Tatooine? And we actually get, you know, where does Poe end up going? We get all of our characters ending up in these places with finality, and we didn't get that apart from Rey in The Rise of Skywalker. But at the end of the day, I actually feel like that was a really smart move, because apart from the ending that George Lucas did for Return of the Jedi, he really matched that ending in just giving us, okay, we're going to give you some key spots around the galaxy where we see the First Order going down, sans the celebration, because it wasn't really conducive of that like it was at the end of Return of the Jedi, right? If you go back to the original ending of Return of the Jedi, before we got all those celebration scenes around the planet in the special editions, it was closer to what J.J. Abrams did in The Rise of Skywalker. But I actually think that the way that he closed out all 9 films was very much in line with all the rest of the movies, right? I wouldn't have minded if we had a little more. Obviously, also like Revenge of the Sith as well. But I really felt like it was on the same sort of poetry beat, hitting the same poetic beats that the rest of the movies did, where if it had done something more akin to The Lord of the Rings, that might have been out of place with the movies as a whole. But look, at the end of the day, I guess and I've mentioned it before, and I don't have any shame in it. I'm a bit of a Star Wars apologist. I just love this. I love this franchise and this genre so much that I prefer to go and look for the positivity in it and the parts of it that I enjoy and how it makes me feel. And I got a hat tip to Brendan Marr, a friend of the show who hosts his own podcast, Page Turners They Were Not, because he really said something that continues to stick with me, and that is, ultimately, it's how these movies make me feel, and that's how I watch films. I try not to nitpick too much, and I just go with how the movies make me feel. We were watching Zootopia last night, and my 14-year-old Kyle is a lot like my wife Melinda, where Melinda does a good job of this because she's an adult, but as a 14-year-old, he was kind of picking apart things in the film that didn't make sense in terms of the storytelling. And Melinda, told him, is like, as authors do, so do screenwriters and storytellers. They often have to paint with this wide brush of painting this universe, but they have to key in on certain things without showing all of it, because the story gets bogged down if you do all of that. And I don't like to go and nitpick to that level, because it ruins my enjoyment of the content. I heard a podcast talking about WandaVision, and they were distilling down the season finale and all these little bits and pieces, and all. I'm like, man, you're sucking the joy out of it. And for some people, maybe that is their joy. Maybe that is entertaining to them. But for me, Star Wars makes me happy and fills me with excitement and wonder, and it inspires me when I write my stories. And that's the biggest reason why The Rise of Skywalker is my favorite film, because it's got elements of all the movies. It riffs off of what I consider is a masterpiece of a film, The Last Jedi, and it closes out all these movies in an epic and just completely entertaining from start to finish way. But what do you think? TalkShowNerd at gmail.com is the email address. Leave a comment on YouTube as well, and I'd love to hear from you with thoughts on this. And I know these are things that I've said before, but I was really struck by what Case S had written, and having watched The Rise of Skywalker and keying in on that. And also kind of going back to Kathleen Kennedy and what Miranda had written, and the people that have a problem with this. It's I do feel bad for individuals, not Case, but other individuals who are out there writing the clickbait, angry content, right? I feel bad that they can't enjoy these things the way that I do, or that many of you who listen do. So, TalkShowNerd at gmail.com, or leave a comment up on YouTube. All right, before I let you go, I do have a brand new book that's going to be out on Tuesday, and I put out this exclusive offer to those who are signed up for the newsletter. If you're not signed up for the newsletter, if you want to find out about this stuff first, go to mynerdworld.net, and when you do, there's a pop-up window right when you go to the page. Just give me you just put in your email address, and you'll be signed up for the newsletter. No spam. But you do find out in advance specials. For example, right now you can pre-order the ebook for The Rocket Queen by going to Amazon.com. It comes out on Tuesday. And I have a very special offer for those that want to get the paperback. I'm still working on the audiobook, so it's going to be another month or so before the audiobook is available. So before I get into the special for the paperback offer, here is the back of the book blurb for EMBARK, The Rocket Queen, Book 5. Luna thought she was traveling to the happiest place on Earth. She's about to discover it's her worst nightmare. 2 decades have passed since the apocalyptic chain of events forced humanity to abandon Earth, when an unprovoked attack on the United Galaxy Coalition leads back to the evacuees' home world. With the colonized worlds in danger, a reconnaissance team on board an advanced starship is sent to investigate. During the journey, mission leader, starfighter pilot Luna Guardia, finds herself stuck in the middle of a mysterious and nefarious plot that only she can unravel. Who is the Rocket Queen, and what is she after? Luna must find out before it's too late. The Rocket Queen is the beginning of a trilogy and Book 5 in the ongoing EMBARK series. I'm really excited for this story. If you've seen the cover art, you get an idea of where we're going. But I had this idea to set an adventure inside of Disneyland. And a big portion of the book does just that. And I'm really, really pleased with what the outcome is. So the Rocket Queen does for Disneyland what Ready Player One did for 80s pop culture content. So right now you can pre-order the ebook for $2.99, and as an exclusive to newsletter subscribers and podcast listeners. Sunday and Monday only. So if you're listening to this today on Sunday when I'm recording this, that would be the 14th, or Monday the 15th. You can go to Amazon.com right now and purchase the paperback for just $10.99. Okay. On Tuesday, on release day, that price is going to go up to $12.99 for release day. So if you're subscribed to the newsletter, you already know this, but if you're a podcast listener, you can get the paperback for just $10.99, Sunday and Monday only, and that should get you, if you're a Prime member, that should get the book in your hands by Tuesday on release day. If you've not read any of the stories in EMBARK, but this particular story sounds interesting to you because of what I described, it is a self-contained story. There is a prologue at the start of the book that explains where we are and how we got to where we are so far. You can use this book as an entry point to the series and essentially use books 1 through 4 as your prequels, if you'd like. So if you're like, well, I've never given your stories a chance before. This is the first time hearing about it. I don't think I want to, I never read them, but I don't think I want to read books 1 through 4 to get to this one, which sounds cool. Nope. You can get EMBARK the Rocket Queen, book 5, and you can use it as your starting point for this new trilogy with books 6 and 7 coming out later this year. So again, go to Amazon.com, search for Jon, Jon Justice. You can find the entire series there right now. Book 1 in ebook is only 99 cents, so you can pick that up. Also, you can go to mynerdworld.net and find out. You can see the cover art there. There's all kinds of stuff there at the website at mynerdworld.net. All right, that wraps up the show for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back again next week. I look forward to hearing from you, talkshownerd@gmail.com.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.